Yeah. So spiritual logic is all about how to make sense of yourself, how to make sense of the world, how to make sense of the situations in your life in a way that is free of religious dogmas. So it's more about how we can meet the moment in our personal power, within our personal power. What is it that we can do to make a difference about the moment, about the way you are experiencing yourself in the moment, all of it. you know so it's a very active way of engaging with the mind, as opposed to breathing practices, witnessing. All of these practices has a nature of passivity to it. It's a very passive way of um, engaging with the mind to create transformation, right? So we are speaking about an active way to really get, in an analogy we can say it's more like, instead of sitting on the side, you're kind of getting on the game and playing in the field and getting results. It's an active way to create results, or transformation, you may call it, right? So let's just get into it, right? So let's look at what is it that we can do at any given moment to shape our experience in a way that we can create good results with whatever, regardless of situation we find ourselves in, right? So what helps is to make a distinction at any given moment, to make a distinction between what is within my power to make a difference right now, right? If you cannot make a change on the circumstance, the only place where you can make a change is in the choices you have, right? So that entirely depends on your capacity to hold that circumstance in your mind, in the grips of your mind, in a variety of different ways. If you're very rigid and if you can only see the circumstance in one way and one way only, then of course there will be a set of choices available to you regardless of how you are seeing or holding that situation in your mind. But you do not get to have any other choices. you know so if you want a different set of choices, right? So people speak about, oh, I didn't have any choices, right? It's not really about not having any choices. There probably was so many different choices. A different person would be thinking like, oh, what is she talking about, or what is she talking about? There's definitely choices, right? So it's the fact that if you cannot see it, the choices that's available to you is completely dictated by your perception of the situation, right? So it's about having that flexibility to kind of step back and acknowledge that my perception is not equal to truth, right? How I see is the way I perceive a situation, right? So how I see is not how it is. Now you are free. And how I see is never, 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 ever how it is. If that's the case, now you have the freedom to ask the question, how would I like to see the situation? You know, you know, how seeing the situation would allow me to connect to my power, would make me show up to the moment and meet the situation in a generative way, I show up at my best to it, you know. So that's the question. Instead of getting stuck at a tunnel vision, where tunnel vision is how I see is how it is. What I experience is all there is to it. You see, now that's the tunnel vision, right? So you want to step out of that. That's the whole point of this spiritual logic. It's all about creating flexibility and fluidity within your mind, where there might be more rigidity in place. Rigidity is all about, like, there's a set, narrow tunnel vision to it all, right? Always how I see is how it is. What I experience is all there is to it. So to step back, to acknowledge that the map is not the territory. Are you familiar with this analogy? The map is not the territory. Okay. So the map is not the territory simply means the map is useful to the extent that you don't mistake it for the territory, but you see the map for what it is. The utility of the map is when it comes to relating to the territory, when it comes to navigating through the territory. So the question is how useful the map is, not about how accurately, like, the map can completely represent it or something like that, right? So do not confuse the way you perceive situation to be the entire territory of it, right? So the map is not the territory. So how I see is the way I relate to that situation, is the way I relate to that circumstance, is the way I'm relating to that moment even, right? But that's not the way it is, right? So now, so the point is to make a habit of also asking really useful questions. Make a habit of asking the right kind of questions. you know at any given moment, what you can do is you can utilize your emotions or your feelings as sort of a compass, right? Seeing how you are feeling. If you're feeling good, there's nothing you have to do. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when everything's just working, right? But if you are relating to a situation, or if you are handling a situation with a lot of struggle, a lot of suffering in it, you know then you might want to ask yourself the question, okay, what am I creating here? So when you're feeling bad, you ask the question, what am I creating here? Not when you're feeling good. You never ask a question like, what am I creating here, when you're feeling good, because what that do is it creates a disconnect from whatever you're feeling. Okay? So you don't want to create a disconnect. You are embedded in that experience in the moment. So when you ask a question like, what am I creating here, it's kind of like going meta on the experience itself. So it kind of disembed you from the experience, disassociate from you from it, instead of being totally associated with it, right? So you created that disassociation, go meta on yourself when you're feeling bad, right? So you're like, okay, what am I creating here? But then again, the question is also very powerful, because every question contained within has certain qualities to it. Any question in its essence has that quality to direct your mind in a very particular direction. Direct your attention, and shift it, and kind of send it into a certain direction. So it's very directional, and it can also shift the mind's attention very fast, right? So that's why we utilize question. But also within a question, something else is hidden. That's the presupposition that's hidden within a question. Like, every question is asked from a certain place, right? You ask a question from a certain place. So the question presupposes that the place from where the question is posed, right? So when I ask the question, what am I creating here, it already presupposes what I am the creator. Then only question makes sense. So I can only ask that question from the place where I am the creator. From that reality, it makes sense. Okay, what am I creating here, right? So the moment I ask the question, it creates a very particular kind of orientation within me, and that's very crucial, right? So when I ask the question, what am I creating here, something else also I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm taking full ownership of whatever that experience is, right? I'm taking full ownership of it. So I'm owning my experience right there. So what am I creating here, right? And then I might go and ask, like, okay, is this useful to me? So do I want this? Do I enjoy this? Right? Do I love this? So usually by the point you ask a question, these kind of questions, mind will kind of not going to whole sort of blaming the circumstance and all sort of stuff like that, but instead come on to your side. Be like, you know what, yeah, actually I don't want this. It's not, I don't like this, I don't enjoy this. I mean, if you're struggling and suffering, there's usually mind is always going to be like, yeah, it's not enjoyable, right? Mind, so you have your mind on your side, so that's also kind of the thing. You're kind of like making a um, uh, creating a certain understanding, like keeping things into a certain perspective there, right, by asking this question. So then you're asking, okay, how would I like to see the situation? How would I enjoy seeing the situation, right? What would I love to create with this situation, right? So all of a sudden, now you're moving in a completely different direction. You're going to be seeing a different set of choices, because questions do one thing very effectively: it always opens up possibilities, right? So you want to open up to new possibilities rather than the ones that you are stuck with. If Probably if you're struggling and suffering, you probably don't have much rich choices available. You won't be seeing that, because the choices that you see is completely dictated by the concepts through which you meet the moment, right? So unless you change the way you conceive the moment, right? So perception is always, before perception there is conception, right? I mean, perception is a form of concept, right? So conception is always going on, but it's not happening w- with your participation. That's the thing. Conceptualization is a process that has started ever since birth, right? But this process is always happening outside of consciousness. It's happening outside of your awareness, right? So you, at this point, you have developed a very rich set of conceptual system, which essentially acts like a map of the world, through which you make sense of the world, which shapes your engagement with the world and your experience of being in it, and so forth and so on, right? So the point is, if you just bring in deliberately new concept to the existing map, now it changes everything. It changes the way you make sense of it. It's like kind of like internal map, right? If the map is different, you're going to be relating very different, right? So either your internal map that you are holding, through which you are engaging with the world and relating and navigating through all of this, is either very useful to you, very is serving you in life, or is not serving you in life. So it's about kind of seeing like, okay, is this useful to me? Is this map really allowing me to get the results that I want from life, right? Speaking about results, let's speak about different modes of engagement with the life, right? Because we grow up in a certain way in our culture, in our society, where we are kind of like applauded for our plans, and going through with your plans, and kind of you know uh, following the step one, step two, step three kind of format, right? So what is your plan and what are you doing? And it's more in that direction, right? But it's a very linear way of engagement with life, right? So the point is to kind of come to a place of more non-linear way of engagement with life. Yeah. So non-linear way of engagement, meaning it's like kind of like you are riding on the on this sort of a boat, where you have the wind element that kind of influences the direction in which you navigate, right? It's called tackling or tacking or something like that. So anyway, so the point is, you cannot just move to the direction of your outcome. You kind of have to go opposite to it and zigzag, and then finally kind of you reach the place. So the point is, you cannot directly go to the outcome, right? So there is this sort of a formula. It's called TOTI. It's like, it means test, operate, test, exit, right? So what it simply means is, you always need to know two things. The only two things that's really relevant is about where you want to go and where you are. That these two things are very essential: knowing where you want to go and knowing where you are. And that operate bit of it is all about making adjustments to where you are, and then you are seeing if that adjustments is either taking you closer to where you want to go or away from it, right? So that's all you do. So basically, you don't have a set plan. You don't know what to do and the next 5 steps to do. But the point is, you don't have to know that. If you really know where is it that you want to go, that's good enough. You can take any action and see, right? You can see, make a comparison between where you are, where you want to go, and make adjustments with where you are in order to take you to that place. So constantly kind of referring back and making adjustments and going, instead of like going with step 1, and now the step 2. So in that sort of format, all sort of situations that you are not really prepared for that shows up, you kind of see it as a sort of disturbance, or something of a distraction, or something of a problem that you need to get it out of the way, right? But if you are working in a non-linear way, you will see that as an opportunity. Okay, what is it that I can learn from this? How can I leverage this? You're not seeing it as a problem. If you see it as a problem, now you have to get rid of the problem. If you see it as, okay, what is it that, is there something in it that I can leverage and make use of, right, to take me closer to where I want to go, right? So you're always sporting for opportunities. You're like, okay, what can I develop from this? What can I learn from this, right? What is it that I can transform from this? So you're looking for stuff. Otherwise, you end up in this sort of an attitude of, oh, I don't want to waste my time, so you don't do anything, because you want to know exactly all the steps before you start doing it, and you don't want to waste your time. But the point is, you don't get to know. You don't get to know what results. When you're thinking in terms of like, okay, I'm wasting my time, it's usually the problem of your sort of internal assessment system. So you are looking at it very binary sort of way, like, okay, either I succeed or I lose. So there's only two way. Either I win or I lose. And if I lose, that means, oh, I'm not good enough. So people tie the result of the outcome with their own self-worth and their own identity, and all of that. Then it becomes, you start to have even fear around whether I will achieve this, right? And once you go into fear mode, now you are working from a survival mode, right? So you cannot do both. You can either survive or you can thrive, right? So the point is, do you want to thrive or do you want to survive? Because if you are working from fear, power doesn't come from fear. Power only comes from freedom, right? So if you have some sort of like a strong attachment to the outcomes, that you set for yourself, then it becomes difficult, because the attachment to the outcome will start to feed off on your own attachment of your own sense of self gets identified and attached to the outcome and the result of the outcome. And you also connect your sense of self to the self-worth with the outcome result. So then essentially now you're functioning from a place of fear, right? Once you're functioning from there, now you are not working generatively, you know. You're working from very much from a, flight freeze, flight freeze, just like either fight mode of it, so you're either gonna hide, or you're going to submit, or you're going to avoid, or something. You are either rising up in a situation or laying low, right? You're either striving forward or hanging back. So where is this hanging back coming from? Where is that, laying low coming from in a situation? It comes from fear, right? That's when we talk ourselves out of things. Oh yeah, oh my god, that's too much risk, what if you lose, right? But based on what criteria you decide what is losing and what is winning. So if you create like a very specific outcome, and there's only one way to realize it, and it all depends on whether I get it or not get it. If I get it, okay, that means I'm good enough. If I don't get it, then I'm a loser, then you see, then you're not really working generatively from that place. So you need to kind of get rid of this attachment if you have a strong attachment. So you need to start asking yourself the question, where am I having attachment to outcomes in my life? And kind of look and bring consciousness to it, just so that you can see where is it that is going on, and then kind of change the makeup, the phenomenology of that. So probably there is a certain sort of neediness. If there is an attachment to outcome, it comes with this sort of like a neediness of like, oh, I need to win, I need to make sure that situation is gonna just go my way, and like, so there's a certain neediness. So you need to kind of take this sort of neediness and demand out of the situation, and you need to kind of upgrade it to preferences. Like I would prefer to have that outcome, instead of like, oh, I need that outcome to happen, or like, oh, it has to happen, oh, it have to happen, like it must happen. Like, you cannot, if that kind of demand is what creates the insecurities, the fear, now you're performing very at below your best, and of course you're going to be creating poor results, because you see different set of choices, because you're working from a survival mode. You need to get it right there, right?
As you said, we should work towards achieving an objective, or like in a non-linear way.
Exactly. Have like a clarity on vision, but don't be attached to that outcome, because the point of the outcome is like to, when you reach the outcome, to kind of help you, guide you to next action and stuff like that. So if the reaching the outcome is not serving you, if it's not even useful to you, then it defeats the entire purpose, right? If getting to the outcome is creating a lot of survival and fear in you, then what's the point of like even having that outcome, right? At the expense of you going into survival mode and all of it.
You recommend to change the goalpost.
Yeah, change the sort of like bringing awareness to places where you have so much attachment to the way the result has to show up, and if there is seeing if you have any sort of your sense of self is tied to that outcome, like your self-worth is tied to that outcome. That's what you want to be paying attention. If that exists, then you want to be removing that. So that's more like creating what I suggest for that is something called identity fasting. Identity fasting means you are kind of like grounding yourself in the words, in the understanding of the words, that whether I do X or whether I do Y, my value as a human being remains neutral and constant, right? So your value as a human being remains neutral and constant, regardless of whether, however the outcomes result is, right? So it's not dependent on it, it's constant and neutral no matter what. So that's identity fasting, right? So it goes a long way, not just only with outcome attachment, but also with people's opinions of you. Because we don't just simply have attachment to people or to things, but we do have attachment to the way people perceive us, the way people treat us, the way people behave to us, respond to us, all of that, right? The way people think of us, the way people speak about us to other people, right? So, oh, yeah, I don't want him thinking of me like that. I don't want her telling to other people I'm that kind of person. There's all sort of things. So what we do is we never are fully present when we are with someone, because most of our energy goes into making sure that you don't come across in a certain way where those attachments are kind of getting threatened. You don't want those attachments getting threatened, so you make sure you behave in a certain way. So if, let's just say, you have an attachment to coming across looking stupid, right? So now you always make sure some of your energy always goes into making sure you don't come across looking stupid, right? But still is demands energy. It needs some sort of like micromanagement on some level, right? So we have so many attachments like this, so we are never fully present. You can only be fully present if you're free of that. If you're no matter what someone's opinion is, however someone behave to you, however someone respond to you, or however someone react to you, if you don't take it personally, if you can realize and ground yourself in the understanding that people's reactions and behavior and responses are they're only reacting to their own thinking, only reacting to their own mind-made reality, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me. To ground yourself in that place, now you don't take things personally. You see, now you're free. Now you're free to just be however you are, however it shows up. Now there is no need of micromanaging all of that, right?
How then set objectives and goals in life?
Okay, I would say what you can bring clarity on is your vision. What is it that you want to create in life? What is the version of you want to create in life? So it's not just the life, it's also about you. It's about, okay, what kind of capabilities do I want to create within myself? So it's about, like, you cannot get into the game if you are not willing to lose. There is a chance that you have to be willing to lose if you're entering the game. Otherwise you cannot enter the game, right? That's one of the conditions. You can win, you can lose, but it's happening, it's gonna happen. You have to also at least consider, right? So the point is to kind of be in the game and also take actions. As you are taking actions, you're also making sure the actions that you're taking is kind of taking you to the place of vision, closer to the vision. So you're always course correcting. You're making sure, okay, this is where I am, I'm taking these actions. Okay, these actions, as soon as you make a commitment. So that's a big thing. It's about making commitment. If you don't make that commitment, until you make a commitment, what happens is there will be hesitation, right? So the point is, you don't get to know beforehand what is going to happen. You don't get to know that. And the point is, you need to be okay with that. Okay, I'm willing to explore and see what is really possible to create, with it.
To not be rigid with the outcome.
Yeah, because if you're like, okay, I don't want to make a mistake, then you end up not doing anything because you are in a paralysis of sort. because you are having all that in your head. I don't want to make a mistake, but now that, the fear of making the mistake, the point of fear is that it doesn't matter whether the fear is big or small. Even if it is so subtle, you still go into your complete self protection mode. you know you go into that mode whether the fear is small or big. And the threat that you're fearing is not really a fear of what is going to, it's whether the result is going to be a big win or not. It's not so much about like, okay, I don't want people to think of me in a certain way if I just don't make it, right? So it's about any kind of threat to your sense of self, even remotely, even subtly, immediately it brings you to that existential crisis place of where, you're that's what fear is. you know but the fear is not, it has nothing to do with any sort of damage to your physical self, but it's more about a damage to the psychological self. you know yeah. So also you can do a lot of things by shifting the personal narratives you hold about yourself within. you know so what I mean by that is, are you familiar with this concept of autobiographic self? Like in spirituality we call this ego. So autobiographic self is basically the stories that you're telling to yourself about yourself to make sense of yourself in the world, right? So the point is, if you bring about a shift in the stories that you're telling to yourself to about yourself to make sense of yourself, right? So if you bring about a change in that story, now it changes everything in life. So these are the three things that are fundamental to organizational development philosophies, right? So the point is, in order to have a generative change happen even within an organization, because when we are speaking about organization, we are speaking about a complex system, right? And this applies the same to also human beings, because we are a complex system, right? So the application of generative change, or the phenomena of generative change, is both applicable to within an organization, also same to a human being, right? So in order to bring generative change, so generative change is like the snowball effect of changes, right? You make a small change, but that small change have a ripple effect, or that just kind of cascades into huge and huge and huge changes in all over, in every aspect and every area of your life. So that's the snowball effect. Like the snowball starts off small, but it just kind of accumulates and keep getting bigger and bigger, right? So that's what you want to bring about in your life, because a lot of things you can change, but it's not going to make a big difference. You know what I mean? It makes a small kind of difference. People quit smoking, but it's not like every area of their life change because they quit smoking. you know that's not the kind of stuff. But or it could be a generated change, but it depends, right? Sometimes certain changes only, it just remains like a small little change in that area only, and it doesn't become like an over encompassing change all over the life, right? So in order to bring generative change in life, three ways we can bring that about. So the first way is to create a big disruption within the system, so within you, right? So how do you bring about a big disruption? So we are speaking about a fundamental shift in the way you are relating, fundamental shift in the way you are perceiving or you are seeing things, right? So that's the first way to bring about a profound shift, a generative change in life, right? So the second way is to have a narrative shift. So when it comes to us, it's the personal narratives. When it comes to an organization, it's like the organizational narrative, right? As an organization, the collective narrative of it. But we are speaking about personal narrative in our own life, right? So to bring about a shift in that personal narrative, because it is within you, it is within your capability and capacity to bring that change to it, because nobody can stop that. People can, like, of course circumstance cannot be changed, but the narrative is always up for changing. It's totally up to you, the way you tell the stories that you're telling to yourself about yourself too. make sense of yourself, right? So you can bring about a change in it deliberately, right? So now the third way to bring about a profound shift in life is to have a generative image. So generative image is an abstract image of you, right? An abstract idea in which captures your mind's imagination. That's what generative image is. So it can be just as simple as you living in your power, you living in your choice, you living connected to your power, and showing up at your best. That already can be generative image, just like that, right? So having some sort of an image, generative image of yourself, or bringing about a shift in your personal narrative, or bringing about a profound shift in the way you fundamentally see things. Now these are the ways you can bring about a whole lot of changes in life. So if you're serious about bringing serious transformation into your life, this is the way to go. you know all of these things has to happen. There is no way your life will profoundly shift without any sort of shift in your personal narrative. You tell the same story and somehow life is changed. No. The point with people who have gone through trauma is this: there is two kind of people, who go through trauma. There are people who go through trauma and after that they kind of take off in life. The trauma kind of becomes like a catalyst or kind of like a point from where they kind of shift their life's trajectory, just kind of goes up. Or there are people who kind of get into a lot of stuckness, from that event onwards, from that day onwards, right? So the difference is in their personal narratives they hold. So the people who actually thrive from that experience, who actually really shift and life just takes off in a good way, so this is called trauma growth. Okay, so the trauma growth only happens to those people who bring about a shift in the way their narrative about the entire trauma is. So if you shift the way you relate to the trauma, you shift the story you have about the trauma, if you stop describing yourself as a victim in the story, through the stories, and ally with your strengths instead of your weaknesses, right? If you can do these things and bring about that sort of a shift in your narrative, now you can grow from that trauma. So emotional trauma literally doesn't exist. What exists is victimhood. People hold themselves as victims in their narrative, in their personal narrative. Instead of allying with their strengths, they ally with their weaknesses. Whatever trauma has happened, if you are here right now, that means you have handled it, right? So there is already kudos to that. You need to ally with the strengths that allowed you to reach here. So what is it that I brought to the table that allowed me to handle all of that and create and bring myself to this place right now? If I'm here, I'm already a winner. You see, or you can be like, oh no, I'm a victim. You can kind of hold yourself as a victim in the stories. And then guess what? That you bring about more of that. Because whatever you rehearse, you create more of that in life. People who worry a lot, they think they worry because they care, but caring has nothing to do with worrying. Because worrying is about inaction. Caring is about action. If you care, you do something. See, caring is about doing rather than worrying being like nothing. Just like I worry about you. Doesn't do anything. It's not. And people somehow think if they don't worry, that means they don't care. That's also not true. Yeah, so it's about you kind of asking yourself and taking full ownership, when you are in your part of the co-creation of the moment, of the situations, taking ownership of your ability to respond within a situation, right? because that's what responsibility is, isn't it? It's the ability to respond. But we seldom think about that as an ability, you know. We just think about that as a responsibility, right? So like a heaviness of sort. So the point is to take full ownership of your responsibility in the co-creation of the moment, right? And also taking ownership of your experience itself, so that you can effectively change it, right? What am I creating here? Is this useful to me? Do I want this? How would I like to see the situation? You can see a moment, a situation through any lens. It's up to you. Doesn't mean just because your mind choose some sort of lens by default through which you're looking and some sort of perception gets shaped, doesn't mean you have to just follow that. You can change it if it's like, you know what, it's not useful to me. I don't enjoy this. You know, it doesn't really connect me to my power. It's not useful to me at all. Why am I looking at this? How would I like to see the situation differently? You know, what is everything about the situation that I am not seeing? Right? You want to kind of open yourself up to possibilities when you are stuck in a narrow tunnel. So if you're stuck with seeing the situation in one particular way, you ask yourself the question, what is everything about the situation that I'm not seeing? Right? Deliberately, you bring your mind to places where it has not been looking. Right? Especially if you're stuck, you know, if it's not helpful, the way you're seeing the situation, it's not helpful at all. It doesn't help to create any good results with the situation, creates poor way of engaging with the situation, right? So you want to kind of move that. So you're like, okay, what is everything about the situation that I'm not seeing? What is everything about me that goes beyond all of this? Right? Bring back that resources that you have available to you in your totality, at your best. The thing is, when you get narrowed down into a minuscule version of you, you don't have any resources that you would normally have access to. So you want to kind of bring yourself out of that narrow shell of a person that you kind of become when you get into such a rigid way of perceiving things, you know. Yeah. Where are we at the timing?
So far it's about 45 minutes.
Okay. No, I just kind of was making sure because I want to have like a closure sort of thing at the last 5 minutes. Okay. So, is there something that's popping out? Is there something that comes to you that you want to ask? I want to know.
Related to that, the emotional aspect of it, because you're talking a lot about the mind and changing perspective. And
Yeah. Okay, the emotional.
sometimes we can't change what we feel, right? Or what's going on in the moment in the body. So my mantra has been love it, change it or leave it. So I do try to change my mindset probably about the situation. But if I just can't handle it, then I leave it.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it's changing the context also, I think, is quite
Yeah.
important factor.
So we can go into that because it's a nice question. Okay. So the question is about how to engage with emotions, right? How to work with emotions, especially if it's negative. Like, I mean, if it's positive, that we don't have to do anything, right? So when usually the emotion is negative, that's when even a question of changing or anything even occurs, right? So as we are experiencing a negative emotion, the model that I would suggest you to kind of bring forth is the model of seeing, being, doing, or being, doing, having, right? So the point is, your being, your ground of being, right? So the ground of being is the emotionality you are emoting, right? Your emotions is the ground of being. So the ground of being is created by your seeing. So seeing creates being. So that's why we are paying attention to perception. Because if you can change, if you can bring about a shift in the way you are seeing it, then that creates a shift in the way you are being with it. Get it? So seeing brings about a shift in being, and being is the place from where doing emerges. So meaning, if I'm being nervous, then probably I'm going to be seeing some set of choices, and I'm going to be taking action on the choices that I see. If I'm being so full of fun and love and joy and confidence and generosity, right? So all of a sudden I see a different set of choices, and I might act on all based on those choices that show up available to us, me in the moment, and I'm going to be engaging with the moment differently, right? So my doings with any given situation that I find myself in emerges from the place of being, right? So that my power, the only place I have power is in two areas. Is in my concepts, in my ideas through which I meet the moment. And these ideas essentially becomes the lens through which that shape my perception. So I need to change the lens in order to see something different. Because what a lens do is create modification to the object of seeing, right? So imagine the concepts, the conceptualization is a process always happening outside of consciousness, right? So you are not participating in it. So the mind, the process of form a concept, right? And this very concept that's formed in the moment acts like a lens through which you look at the situation you find yourself in, and a perception gets shaped. So this much is already happening outside of consciousness. So that's why we find it really difficult to take ownership of our emotions, because our conception and perception already happen without our participation outside. It's kind of like default. Mind never asks us, oh, what idea through which I should see the moment or something. It never occurs because it's already done without our participation at all, right? So that's why, because of this cognitive bias, you need to acknowledge that how I see is never how it is, right? Because of this cognitive bias, you accept how I see is not how it is ever, right? So now you have the freedom to change your perception, because how I see is never how it is. So the question is it useful the way I'm seeing it?
Let's say I cut off my leg, and
Yeah.
then I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, like, how should I see the situation now? Maybe I should see it not as a cut off leg. I see it as an intact leg, but I'm in pain. So I might not even be able to ask myself this question.
No, the point is doing. Remember, being, doing, like seeing, being, doing, right? The perception leads to phenomenology, meaning your ground of being, and from where actions emerge. So if you're already cutting off the leg, so the question is, what is the ground of being like from where this action of cutting off the leg emerged?
I don't cut it off. It's cut off by some accident.
Ah, okay. So it's just somehow some accident happened,
I'm in pain.
or you are in pain. So in that moment, the point is the pain is there, right? So at this point, what really helps is to make a distinction between your circumstance and choice, right? So the pain is there, and there's nothing you can do to change that pain, right? So in that moment, the point is about how you are relating to the pain. So if transformation is essentially a shift in relationship. So the question is, how am I relating to this pain? Of course, if you're relating, what you cannot be with will not let you be. So if you cannot be with the pain will not let you be, right? So the point is to create that transformation. If you have like let's just say, hate relationship with the pain, oh, I hate this pain, so you need to kind of again go into your seeing, how am I seeing this pain? Oh, I hate this pain, I want to get rid of this pain. Oh, when will it go? Oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? You can go into so many different directions, right? So you can make it personalized. Then you can go into a victim psychology and all of that, right? So the point is to bring about a shift in the way you are relating with pain. So the point is, I'm going to ask myself, is this useful to me, the way I'm relating to my pain? Like, is this useful to me, all of this? So that includes all of the way I am seeing the pain, all of that, right? So then I'm going to ask myself, okay, how would I like to see the situation? How is it useful? So the point is to bring about an attitude of when you're going to test out in a dressing store with clothes. So you're kind of trying on a dress and see how it feels. See, does it connect you more to your power? Does it raises your vibration? You're kind of seeing how you feel in it, right? So if you, the way you are seeing the whole story you have around the pain is creating a complete disconnect from your power, it's not useful to you. So the point is, okay, what is it that I can do about it? So the point is, you can change, you can say, create a rich narrative even there by saying, you know what, I'm done with this. Let's just say you have this whole story going on. Oh, I hate this pain. All of that is going on. You're saying, oh, why me, and all of that. Then immediately you're saying, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't do this anymore. I choose to ally with my strength. I choose to live in my power, in my choice, right? So then you're saying, I choose to see this pain through love. I choose to explore with this pain. And I choose to commit to changing this relationship I have with this pain. And I'm owning my commitment. You see, these words are very powerful. You're deliberately bringing in words that have rich ideas connected to it. Commitment, choice, ownership, owning my choices, owning my commitment. You see? So these kind of ideas create now a rich personal narrative. And I'm saying, I am that. I choose to see this pain through possibility. Right? So either the pain can be a problem, or I can see what is there I can learn from this pain. What is it I can develop from it? What is it that I can transform from with this? You see? Again, there's no losing or winning, right? So it's all about, the point is, you take ownership of all the little wins or bigger wins, however it is. So you leverage the upside and mitigate the downside. Always going to be results. So the result is bad, you're going, you know what, I got unlucky. Mitigate the downside, right? Or you know what, random stuff happens. Does it, can we really underestimate the power of randomness as a force in the universe? No. Randomness does exist, right? Random things do influence the course of events. How is penicillin found? How is LSD found? Right? Anything, right? So many things. Yeah. Anything else? Is it kind of clear? Is it bringing?
How much time we have? Yeah. The emotional layer is still, because the mind is not clear, when we're in pain.
Yeah.
Especially when we lose a leg.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
sitting like meditating or.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Especially when the body takes over.
But
Bodily elements of us, of our existence.
But-
We take over the mind. And we are not still in our minds. We can't make a rational, ethical evaluation of the situation. Then we act based on our instinct, and especially
But,
how to navigate that in a constructive way.
I do have experience with working with someone, a girl who is now maybe 38 years old. She has been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when she was 16 or 17. So she has been struggling with this condition for the last 21 years of her life. So for the last 15 years, she even had struggles to even kind of like walk, like basically even walking from here to there. It takes a lot of pain, So it's a condition where you have to kind of live with it,
It's a chronic pain.
Yeah, it's chronic pain
Actually,
all the
it
time.
includes
Yeah.
immediate
Yeah,
pain.
yeah, this is like, yeah, but still it's challenging to imagine like pain in all the joints all the time, all through for like last 20 years. That's some pain. Yeah, yeah. So so she was in depression, she was in suffering, and she was having also pain, and there's all the more reason for her to stay as a victim too, because she has this condition and so many others have it better, right? So then I asked her, well, it could have been worse. There are people in paralysis in this condition. What about them? You are still walking, right? So then she's like, yeah. So the point is, you get to still choose. The point is, the glass is half empty, and it is also true the glass is half full, but it is up to you. How do you want to see it, right? So if the leg is this thing happened with the leg, of course, you can see, uh, there's going to be some adaptation time to all of it, but you definitely want to bring in a better personal narrative that's going to connect you more to your power than otherwise.
But it's after. I'm talking
Yeah, of
now
course.
the accident. The accident happens just
Yeah,
now, and I put my leg.
yeah, you don't have to do nothing. You just, yeah, there is no rule in the universe that says you cannot suffer or something. In that moment, whatever goes on, it is okay.
What do I do? I cannot. I'm losing blood. So I'm lying on the floor. Like, how do I act?
Yeah, I think
What's my guidance?
so you in that moment, I guess it is, I don't really know, because it depends on also other interdependencies, whether there are other people available, because you are kind of like lost the leg and you're on the floor.
Blood,
Yeah, you're
I
losing
can't
blood.
think.
Yeah, it's not really just up to you to make an action. Like, okay, of course, maybe at that point there is only some things for you to do. Let's just say there's no one there. Probably all that you can do is just kind of like let go in that moment, or you can just kind of work yourself. No, I'm not gonna accept this. Like, not gonna make a situation better. Or there
I
are
might
people
have to go
involved.
to the hospital somehow. If there's no one, I might have to force myself to get up and
Yeah,
fight
yeah,
my panic and
yeah,
my
yeah.
adrenaline and everything I have
Yeah.
in order to make it
Yeah.
myself. To try to crawl to the next house. But it's not a rational. What I'm saying, it's not a rational decision. It's a bodily decision. It's a survival instinct.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
acting out of instinct.
Exactly.
And I don't have access to my rational mind in that moment.
It doesn't, you don't have to have access to, that's the way our mind is organized. In a situation where there is some sort of threat to our physical body, we are the brain, literally the blood is supposed to go away from prefrontal cortex and to meet the needs, to survival mechanisms, and everything can be active. Of course, at that point is not a time of rationality. The stuff I'm talking about is to more deal with the psychological situations that you suffer from, rather than from physical situation. Of course, the bus is coming. It's not a time to rationally like, okay, what is the circumstance of choice? No, because you have already have inbuilt mechanisms, gut instincts, and everything, kind of like, even without thinking, to take action. Like precedence, action takes precedence, because body takes over in certain situations, fight or flight sort of situations.
My point is that real daily life, day-to-day life is in between those extremes you're talking about. Because you talk about what I'm talking about is the very extreme
Yeah.
moment where rational thinking is impossible.
Yeah.
What you talk about is a very rational,
Yeah,
meditative
yeah,
state.
but the thing is, we usually don't come up with life and death situations that often as the psychological suffering that people suffer through their life. The chances of life or death situations are way less, actually, considered to the psychological sort of fears that people are struggling with.
I also can't be in a meditative state all the time. So my
Yeah.
point is that we are in between the state you're talking about mostly and the state I was referring to. So how to navigate life between the very rational state and also the bodily instinctive states. Because if you see, I don't know, a beautiful woman, or we see food, delicious food but unhealthy, our body is attracted by it. But then our mind at the same time draws us away from it because it says, well, maybe it's not aligned with your vision.
Okay.
Then how do we navigate this constant struggle, like back and forth?
Okay, so but what you are actually asking about is more about a mind management sort of a question, because yeah, because the primary needs of the body, like the comforts of the body, certain things are the demands or the concerns of our animal mind, our mammalian, our reptilian part of our brain. takes its concerns are more about your comfort, your status, the hierarchy, the power, status, so many things.
More basic,
Pleasure,
the
yeah,
sensory.
pleasure, food, survival, everything, all of that goes. That's the basic needs. So the thing is, the prefrontal cortex, the higher mind or the more human mind, the more evolved part of our, like, compared to our other predecessors. So this prefrontal cortex is more concerned about vision and values and fulfillment and stuff like that, and the lower mind, or the reptilian mind, is concerned about pleasure, comfort, satisfaction. It's a very immediate need, immediate payoff sort of thing. So now that is actually a bigger issue. Now, that is a problem actually, because the many of our system is fundamentally set in such a way to make us always be on our animal brain, right? All of the, if you go into Instagram, the algorithm is like having psychology and stuff inbuilt into it. It knows what makes you tick, what videos make you stay longer, and all of that stuff, so, and it feeds more into you, right? So the point is, we become consumers most of the time. And so the point is, when we are consuming a lot of the time, we are not creating. So we cannot do both. We are either being creating, or you are consuming. So the point of this, all of this stuff, is to keep you be more and more consuming, and your time spent in it has to be increased, right? That's the whole agenda of it. So yeah, and what the problem that happens is, many times when we are really what really takes us out or distracts us from the vision that we are focusing in our life is mainly these sort of immediate payoff stuff. We go for the immediate payoff, and everything, all the advertisement, it's all, we make a better consumer when we live primarily from the animal brain, because it's all about immediate payoff, immediate comfort, immediate pleasure, right? And all of this stuff is also always about offering that, presenting. It's not about promising fulfillment. It's not about promising fulfillment of your vision. These things are not within the capacity to promise, right? So that's one thing, that always keeps us like not create so much with our life. People end up being primarily consumers, and it serves the corporate agenda, because there is a lot of people making a lot of money, a lot of creators making a lot of money by we being consumers, right? So it's not just for nothing. They have skin in the game for a lot of people, and so it's just like the way it is at this point. So what you're speaking about, the animal brain, right? The animal brain essentially is kind of like the elephant, and the human brain is more about like being the rider on top of the elephant. But the thing is, the so-called power that we have in rationality, in our prefrontal cortex, when it comes to choices and all of that stuff, it's like the animal, right? The prefrontal cortex is the human, but the so-called power the person riding the elephant feels is only to the extent that the elephant is ready to go along with the plan. But if let's just say elephant is easily spooked by rats or something, and a bunch of rats just jump around the way, now the so-called power and everything kind of slips away immediately, because the elephant is going to go its own way, because you really don't have that power. So the point is to kind of have like a good terms with the animal brain, to let the animal brain know, like, hey, you know what, man, if we kind of reach this vision, it's good for you and me, because you get all of that stuff, the comfort, the pleasure, and all of that stuff, the value in the society, and the power in the society, being like someone, respected in the society, all of that stuff is going to just come through. And so then I was like, okay, I guess I have skin in the game here. You get it? And you kind of like front load the stuff that you really is aligned with your vision, and backload the comfort and the pleasure based stuff. So you gave that as like a sort of reward sort of stuff. They're like, okay, let's just get into this stuff, vision, so that we get all of that kind of set in, and then okay, we get to enjoy my words. So you can front load and back load stuff like that. But of course, in a situation where your leg is chopped off or something, of course, there's no freaking way rational you can be rational. It's just one of those moments when all the blood flow from the prefrontal cortex literally go to the other part, so that your body literally can take over. So yeah, of course, rationality is not applicable. The point is, nothing works all the time. The point is to have the discernment to know when something works and when something doesn't, and also have the enough flexibility to kind of have different things to kind of work with it. It's a good making adjustments to where you are, to see if it takes you closer to where your vision is set at. Not so much about like, okay, oh, why is it not working? It's supposed to work. It's after step 1, after step 2. Step 3 should work. I don't know. Like, no, it's not so much, okay, it's not working. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. Okay, this. And, oh, I don't know what are all the steps now. You don't have to know. You cannot connect the doors looking, you can only connect the doors going backwards, like Steve Jobs said. Or, like Mike Tyson said, everyone have a plan until you get kicked in the, punched in the face, right? So the same way, you need a plan, but nothing goes according to the plan. You kind of have to still find that middle way. Just like rationality is good, you can work with all of it, but it's not like the same, like you're in a situation where a life-threatening moment is happening. Now you just go all rational on yourself. No, in that moment probably body takes over, and that is probably the need of the moment. That's what is need of the hour, that moment. And that's enough intelligence within our system to know, okay, this is the freaking time for getting the body to kind of take over. Okay.